Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to cut through the noise and get you the insights that matter. Every software team feels it, right? That constant pressure. How do you ship good code faster without, breaking things or burning out? It's always this balancing act, speed versus stability. So today we're diving deep into something that aims to solve that. Azure DevOps. We're going to unpack this whole suite of tools, look at its role in continuous integration and continuous deployment, CI/CD, our mission, give you that shortcut, help you understand how it streamlines the entire software delivery lifecycle, all based on the material we've gathered. Hopefully, we'll see why it's seen as such a game changer in modern software development. Let's get into it. Okay, so start us off. What is Azure DevOps? Fundamentally, our sources often call it a cloud service from Microsoft, a sort of comprehensive toolkit. But what does comprehensive really mean here? Can you maybe expand on that?
Absolutely. I think of Azure DevOps less as a tool and more like an integrated platform. It's designed to cover the whole software journey. So from the initial idea, planning, tracking work, writing the code, testing it, and then actually delivering it, it's really built to help different teams, devs, testers, ops, work together smoothly. And it plugs right into the IDEs developers use, plus tons of other third-party tools teams might already have. And to really get what comprehensive means, it's helpful to look at its 5 main services. First up, there's Azure Repos. That's your source control, where the code lives. Git repositories, basically. Then critically, Azure Pipelines. This is the real engine room for CI/CD automation. Build, test, deploy that happens here. For managing the project itself, the tasks, the backlog sprints, you've got Azure Boards. Think agile planning. Then Azure Test Plans comes in for, testing, specifically manual testing, exploratory testing, getting that feedback loop going. And finally, Azure Artifacts. This is for managing all your packages, your dependencies like NuGet, NPM, Maven packages, keeps it all tidy.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit then. Wow, that's quite a lineup. Azure Repos, Pipelines, Boards, Test Plans, Artifacts. Each one sounds pretty crucial on its own, but the power seems to be in how they connect, right?
Exactly.
Which brings us to the why. We hear CI/CD mentioned constantly, so why are these practices just so critical now? Let's maybe start with CI, continuous integration. What's that really about for a team day to day?
Right. Continuous integration, CI, it's basically about automating the process of merging code changes from all the different developers working on a project into one central place, the main repository, and doing it frequently, like multiple times a day, ideally. The huge advantage, every time code gets merged, automated tests run instantly. So you catch bugs, integration problems, conflicts really early.
Ah, so it's about that immediate feedback.
Precisely. Developers find out right away if something's broken instead of, weeks later when it's much harder and more expensive to fix. And continuous deployment, CD, kind of takes that baton from CI and runs with it. It automates the release process. So once code changes pass all the automated tests in CI, CD can automatically push those changes through different environments like testing, staging, and potentially all the way to production. The aim is to make releases less of a big, scary manual event.
Okay, makes sense. Less manual clicking, fewer chances for human error.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, putting CI and CD together in these automated pipelines gives you some serious advantages. You cut down development time massively. You improve the actual quality of the software because testing is constant. You get features out to users much, much faster, predictably too.
Yeah.
And it helps everyone stay on the same page. Devs, QA, ops, improves transparency. It's really about delivering better software faster and more reliably.
That's definitely the promise, the why. But, for a lot of folks listening, the how is where it really clicks. So here's where it gets really interesting. How does Azure DevOps do all this? How does it make CI/CD happen in such a streamlined way? You mentioned Azure Pipelines is key.
Yeah, Azure Pipelines is absolutely central to the automation piece in Azure DevOps. It's incredibly flexible. It can build code for Windows, Linux, Mac OS, doesn't really matter. And it hooks directly into wherever your code lives. GitHub, Bitbucket, Azure Repos itself, you name it. So the moment the developer pushes code, boom, a pipeline can kick off automatically. That's your CI trigger right there.
Okay, automatic triggers. What else makes pipelines powerful?
Well, a big thing is the YAML configuration. You define your entire pipeline, build steps, test steps, deployment steps as code. Write in a YAML file.
Ah, pipeline is code.
Exactly. Which means your pipeline definition lives with your application code. It's versioned, it's repeatable, it's transparent, makes managing changes so much easier. Plus, it comes with a huge library of pre-built tasks. Need to run tests, build a Docker image, deploy to Kubernetes. There's likely a task for that. And yeah, speaking of things like Docker and Kubernetes, it has really strong integrations for containerization and deploying to various cloud platforms, not just Azure.
That sounds incredibly powerful for automating the flow. But with all that automation, things are moving fast. How do you keep track? How do you get visibility, from that first line of code somebody writes all the way to it running in production?
Great question. That's where the end-to-end traceability comes in. And this is largely thanks to how Azure Boards integrates with everything else. What's fascinating here is that every single commit, every build that runs, every deployment that happens, it can all be linked directly back to the work item in Azure Boards.
So like the user story or the bug fix task.
Precisely. You get this complete chain of evidence. If a build fails, you know exactly which code changes were in it and which work item they relate to. If a feature is deployed, you can see its entire history. It provides total visibility across the whole pipeline, which is invaluable for troubleshooting and just understanding what's going on.
Okay, that linkage sounds critical. Now, deploying, you mentioned getting code into different environments. Dev, test, staging, prod. How does Azure DevOps help manage those transitions safely?
It offers really solid environment management. You can formally define these different stages, dev, test, staging, production, whatever you need, right within Azure DevOps pipelines. And the crucial part here is approval gates. You can set up rules so that a release cannot automatically proceed from, say, staging to production without specific people signing off.
Ah, so a manual check before the final step.
Exactly. Or maybe automated checks need to pass, like security scans or performance tests. It gives you control points to manage risk. You ensure only code that's been properly vetted and approved makes it to the really critical environments, reduces risk massively.
And speaking of risk security, it's huge today. People talk about DevSecOps baking security in earlier. How does Azure DevOps help teams actually do that within the pipeline, not just as an afterthought?
Yeah, that's absolutely vital. Shifting left on security right. Azure DevOps facilitates this by letting you integrate security tools directly into your CI/CD pipelines. So as part of your automated build or release process, you can automatically run security scans, static analysis, dynamic analysis, vulnerability scanning, checking dependencies.
Using what tools?
Could be various things. You can integrate popular third-party tools like SonarQueue for code quality and security, or specialized vulnerability scanners. Microsoft also has its own offerings, like Microsoft Defender for DevOps. The point is, you embed these checks into the automation. Security becomes part of the everyday workflow, catching issues much, much earlier, which is way cheaper and safer than finding them in production.
Okay, so if we pull all of this together, the automation, the traceability, the environment controls, the security integration, what are the really big wins, the core benefits a team gets from using Azure DevOps for CI/CD? What should listeners really grasp?
I think there are a few key takeaways. First is scalability. It genuinely works for tiny startups and massive enterprises. It grows with you. Second, flexibility. It's not opinionated about your language, your platform, or even your cloud. You can use it with AWS, GCP, whatever. You're not locked in.
That's a big one.
Huge. Then there's efficiency, automating all that manual work. It leads to faster releases, definitely, but also more reliable ones. Less human error, more consistency. Teams can focus on building features, not fighting deployments. And finally, collaboration. Having everything in one place, code, work items, pipelines, test results, it really does break down silos. Devs, testers, ops, they're all looking at the same information. It fosters a much more unified, collaborative culture.
That paints a really compelling picture. But let's make it concrete. Theory is great, but practice is better. So what does this all mean for a real company? Can you maybe share an example?
Sure. Let's take a hypothetical but very typical scenario. A software company, maybe mid-size, struggling with their release process. It's slow, it's manual, maybe happens once a month, and often introduces bugs because the testing is rushed or inconsistent. They decide to implement Azure DevOps. They set up Azure Repos for their code, Azure Boards for their work tracking, and critically, they build out an Azure pipeline. Now, when a developer pushes code to their Git repo, hosted maybe on GitHub or Azure Repos, the pipeline automatically kicks off. Step 1, it pulls the code. Step 2, it runs all the unit tests. If they pass, Step 3, it builds the application, maybe compiles it, packages it. Step 4, maybe it containerizes it using Docker. Step 5, it runs integration tests against the container.
Okay, a whole automated sequence.
Exactly. And if all that passes, maybe it automatically deploys that containerized app to a staging environment on, say, Azure Kubernetes Service AKS. And what's fascinating here is the speed and impact. This whole chain code, push, test, build, containerize, deploy to staging might take, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Instead of days or weeks of manual effort.
Wow.
Developers get feedback almost immediately. If their build breaks staging, they know within minutes, not days later. The QA team always has a fresh, testable environment. And then, with an approval gate, They can confidently promote that same build to production. They went from maybe error-prone monthly releases to potentially multiple confident deployments per day. It completely changes their ability to iterate and respond to customer needs.
That's a powerful example for minutes instead of weeks.
Well, yeah.
It really illustrates the transformation. So it's clear Azure DevOps is really reshaping how teams build and ship software. That automation for CI/CD, that end-to-end visibility, it seems to genuinely empower teams to deliver better software faster. Doesn't matter if you're a small shop or a huge enterprise.
It really does lay a strong foundation. And, this raises an important question. Thinking ahead, as automation gets even smarter, maybe with AI woven in, what does that next level of continuous delivery look like? How might tools like Azure DevOps evolve further? Could they start predicting issues, maybe even suggesting fixes, simplifying the developer's life even more, building on this platform? It's interesting to consider where it could go.
That is a fascinating thought for the future. AI-driven pipelines, maybe something definitely to mull over. We've covered a lot today, from the core components to the real-world impact. As you think back on our deep dive, what's one thing, one idea or perspective that really stands out to you?